Hi everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name's Sherri and I am doing another video on 3D interference. I'm focusing a little bit today on a special topic because I've had so many people reach out asking questions and a few comments on the latest videos that I've done on my channel about narcissists, psychopaths, sociopaths, and kind of how they fit in the spectrum of starseeds. And I think it's a really important topic to discuss because we don't want to throw everybody in the category of evil or entity attached or things like that, because there are special circumstances that I believe that we need to be clear about. Remember, everything is a spectrum, so there's never one truth for everything. Everything is multidimensional. I think that a biggest part of our discernment right now as a collective is one, deciphering that that is a possibility, but also, where things lie on the spectrum of severity and how it relates to everyone else and how it affects each one of us individually, but also collectively as a group. So there's so many variables with regard to anything and everything that we're learning about, things that are being disclosed, things about ourselves that we're unraveling as we're healing through our own traumas. It's thick right now, and I can't tell you how many starseeds, likely people that are watching my videos, are in these categories, which is why I think so much of what I say resonates with a lot of the people watching, is because they are going through all of these things. And I think that I tend to attract those people because perhaps we have some sort of a soul contract where I agree to help a certain amount of people in a certain way. And that's why a lot of the things that I talk about are really important and resonating with a lot of people, because it's really important right now, because a lot of us are going through it and a lot of us are unsure and uncertain about things. And some of us need guidance. Some of us are just really struggling with the truth and in our heart of hearts, including myself. I am learning along with everyone else, which is why I've had many and several recently, kind of heart to hearts with everybody in my own videos, just raw videos that I have done, telling everybody about my own experiences. And learning discernment publicly is really challenging because it's not like I could hide mistakes that I make, or I'm seen talking to one person and then suddenly we're not speaking anymore. And then people ask, where is this person? How come you're not doing interviews with them anymore? And I don't tell anybody my personal business anyways, but it still causes a lot of questions. And so I have to be careful about what I say or how I say it, and how much I explain is really up to my own free will, as far as how much I want to display for everyone watching, my own experiences. But it's still, nevertheless, how much I choose to share. Some people are just going to fill in the blanks regardless of what I say or don't say. So that's a really uncomfortable place for me to be in. But I do this purposely. I try to come across as humble as possible because I am very clear that I'm learning just along with everyone else. I just happen to be speaking about things that I have learned a lot about, or I'm learning about through my sessions, or their heavy life experiences. But I also have epic fails like everyone else. And so it's just nice to know that we can all communicate together as a beautiful, healthy group of compassionate people that are very open-minded and understanding of each other's journeys, which is why I really try not to judge people. But I'm also very honest that there was a period in my life where it was pretty dark, and I wasn't in control of my shadow side, and I was very judgmental and I wasn't forgiving. And I kind of acted like, a hard ass and whatever. That's my journey. But I like to be honest about it so people know that, where I've come from, where I'm going, the challenges that I'm having now, and where that I continue to have, and where I feel I'm going. And if we are open and honest about that, and our seemingly failures, are some of our greatest treasures. But anyways, the reason I'm talking about all of this right now is because the narcissistic labeling, or the psychopath or the sociopathic labeling, and then you intertwine the starseeds in with all of that, it gets really layered and very confusing. And I think a lot of the labels as a part of 3D interference in our reality are thrown around ambiguously for a reason. So no one actually, I think they're just words that have words have power, both good and bad. And so if we're throwing around sociopath or narcissist all the time, or all of these negative terms, and we don't really understand, the root cause or the whys behind it, it could be really hurtful and also detrimental to people, because we're just diagnosing people on our own. Oh, well, she's just a narcissist, or he's just a sociopath. And hey, I'm guilty. I've done it before. More than I'd like to admit. It's just, it rolls off the tongue sometimes. But I want to do this video today because I think that there's so much rawness being unraveled in our reality right now, that it's important to recognize the multidimensionality of everything, and the whys behind, at least the whys that how I understand them. And I talk about my journey of hardship and being angry, and not being the most open-minded to other human beings, both male and female. I had the biggest challenge more actually with females than I've ever had, because I was bullied so much growing up by females. It was almost like I was a target. I was like a target on my back that said, be mean to this girl. And I had a lot of catty girls that were just awful to me. And it broke my heart every time, because I truly didn't understand what I did. And I probably didn't do anything wrong, but try explaining that to a young girl in a very vulnerable place in their life, especially one like myself who moved around. So not only am I dealing with being the new girl at a school quite often, but being bullied by the girls right when I start. And it's just like, you just want to put your head down and, cry all the time, and you just don't want to be in this world. So it was quite challenging. But as a result of that, I think I could have gone along the path of narcissism, or narcissistic type personality disorder eventually, if I didn't break those patterns and I didn't break free of that. And that's why I want to talk about it, because I could have easily been that person. And maybe at some point someone did call me that because of the behavior that I had. I'm going to hurt you before you hurt me, or I'm not going to let you in because I don't trust anybody. And probably people looked at me in certain ways. Maybe they called me certain things that would have been hurtful then, but now I understand that in hindsight. So it truly is 2020. So I want to go through the three aspects of the start of kind of narcissistic tendencies. Again, I don't like labels, but for this conversation, I am labeling because I want to dissect the labels a little bit and then explain it. And then I'll go into the starseeds with the third category. So I don't have a master's degree. I'm not a scientist. I don't have a medical degree. So much of what I say comes from my own knowing, energy, energy is everything. So it explains so many different things. And my sessions, the things that I've learned through working with adults and children over the years, and even animals, the lessons that animals have taught me over the time, especially when I was a child. And the animals taught me so many different things I think to help me break free of the vibration of just bitterness and anger that I was in, and resentment. So the first category I want to talk about as we break down these narcissistic personalities is kind of the psychopath, right? So we have the terminology, the psychopath. What is the psychopath, or the narcissist that has the psychopathic tendencies? And that one is, I want to start with that one because I think it's the most severe and the most important to talk about first. Because the psychopath is somebody that at some point has lost their consciousness, meaning they don't have any empathy anymore. They are so far on the spectrum of shadow side taking over that it's just, there's not even a spectrum anymore. They are just in a dark place. So they self-sabotage. They tend to attract negative entities, and this is the group that could actually have an entity that's even taken over them at one point, which is why we get that terminology of no conscious. They don't have a conscious because they don't have any remorse for the behavior they have. They don't feel bad afterwards that they've done something wrong or hurt somebody. So they don't have empathy. They lack passion. Where did that go? And it's important that all three categories, well, really the two that I want to talk about, the primary categories that I've kind of in my mind came up with to just help myself distinguish, I believe we have all started at some point with somewhat of a clean slate. Now, if you talk about cellular memory and epigenetics and ancestral trauma and all of this, it's of course past lives are significant. They can significantly impact the light that's within someone when they're born. And etherical blueprint, etherical viruses. There's a lot of other things, but just to make it simply, let's say that everyone starts with a clean slate in this life without the other stuff that complicates it. Now, if a child is born into a family of maybe other narcissistic parents, or they have addiction, struggle with addiction, depression, or whatever, maybe they don't want to be parents, whatever the reason being, and this child is not receiving the nourishment, the feeling of security or being wanted or loved that they need from the time they are born. And some of this has to do with MK Ultra and dark families who are purposely traumatizing the children. And that's an extreme. I'm just talking about a majority of the population who have to happen to be in families where they're just not given any love. And, you know, most bullies are bullied at home, or they're mistreated or abused physically, emotionally, mentally, verbally, all of the above, or some of those. And then they go to school and they have to take that out on somebody else, or they believe that's how you're supposed to treat other people because that's what they get. So they take it out on others. So the girls that were likely mean to me were, maybe they didn't feel loved at home. And so they targeted someone else that was vulnerable and weak so that they could feel superior to them because they didn't get that ever at home or anywhere else in their life. But the psychopath really has lost their sense of purpose. That's in a natural and healthy way. They don't have boundaries with other people. They like when they hurt. They like the feeling. They have a dark mind because they're tapped into the dark matrix. And maybe they have a lot of entities or demonic entities or shadow beings or variations of beings around them that are not of the light, that encourage them to do negative, dark things. And there are layers to the dark things that they may do. I mean, the murderers that are psychopaths that kill people in cold blood, that's, you know, an extreme. And then there are others that just prey on people just to hurt them, just to crush them, just to build them up and to crush them. The thing about psychopaths is that they're pathological liars. You know, my earring is falling out. They are pathological liars. And the thing that's disconcerting about them is that they don't actually realize that it's not that they don't realize that they're lying. They feed into the lie. Like the lie becomes their reality, and they're so good at it that people are fooled by them because the lie is their truth. It becomes their truth. Everything is inverted. So they're pathological lies, and they're quite good at it, and they get people, and they feed off of building somebody up, drawing them in through their vulnerabilities, and then, you know, just smashing them for it. So if a woman has, you know, if it's a man or a woman, I don't mean to bash genders. If a person feeds off of the vulnerability of another person that's been traumatized or hurt in a romantic relationship somewhere else, and they come in and they act like they are just the best thing, that they, you know, very compassionate, very loving, and they draw them in with their charm and charisma, and they make all these promises, or maybe they don't make promises, but the person just believes them. And then once they hook them in, then they get enjoyment out of knocking them back down. And then they build them back up, and then they knock them back down. And that's where that unhealthy bouncing back and forth of the relationship goes, with the quote, you know, the labeled narcissistic relationship, where the person is just, it's like a revolving door, or it's just constant up, downs, but that's how they keep them, because they hurt them and then they get the enjoyment out of it. And I think that is almost like the loosh, that they can, if they do have entity attachments, that's the loosh that the entities will feed off of, and it like energizes, and it also gives the person this feeling of power, the power that they have over this vulnerable man or woman that they are manipulating and enslaving to some degree, or maybe or to severity. And they draw power and satisfaction, and then their entities, of course, can loosh off of that, or maybe they've promised or sold their soul. Some of these psychopaths could have sold their soul at some point. On a side note, I feel like I shouldn't have to say this, but I've had some recent experiences, more than one, that I've had people tell me that they have dabbled and sold their soul to because they thought it would be helping somebody else. Please never do. I mean, if you listen to anything I say, don't ever try that, because there's such trickster energy. They're going to promise you the world. And once you sell your soul, you might think it was a one-time thing, but I can almost guarantee that it's not. And there's something on some level that you have consented to doing that you think is innocent, and it's so much deeper than you realize. And they may leave you alone for a while, and you may feel like, oh, that worked. I got what I wanted out of it. And then months and months go by, and then all of a sudden, 6 months from now could be a year, they come back, and they're gonna, they want what you promised them, and you think you were done with them, and they're like, it's not safe. Don't ever, please don't give consent to giving your willpower, your soul, or anything over. It's a really scary time, and it really frustrates me and infuriates me, actually, that a lot of the celebrities, now many of which are MK Ultra, and there's a lot behind it, but they are encouraging the young women and young men of our time right now, the young ones, to think that that's a cool thing. And they are encouraging it and showcasing it, and they are doing a lot to make it seem like it's cool. And look at what you could get. I have all this fame, all this money. You could, and really all they're trying to do is the dark players above them that are encouraging the celebrities to do that, is if we can normalize it and make it like cool, like if the young celebrities are doing it, and the actors and the singers are putting the devil horns on, or the cute little devil outfits that they make them look so sexy and this and that, then these kids can inadvertently invite these energies in, and inadvertently consent to it. Next thing you know, you have millions of girls and young boys basically thinking it's cool. And then it's a slippery slope from there, because then some celebrity can convince them to sell their soul, or to whatever the next layer is. And then next thing you know, we've now invited, and they need to be invited in. So a lot of these, and that's what these rituals are about. They do all these horrible things, and then the demon reveals itself. It can't really come and exist in our reality 100% physically. So it shows itself through the power. It's a whole process. But anyways, I didn't mean to get off topic here. But back to the psychopath, some of them have sold their soul at some point. And then we get into NPCs, because the NPCs, they are a soulless being, because the soul has exited the body, because at some point some other entity has taken the place of that soul that was once there. And so we have so many NPCs walking around the world that are just walking around, just like not connected, and they seemingly are in a hypnotic state, or they are pushing the agendas, the woke agendas, and the various agendas that are out there that is being instructed by the dark players to follow. And a lot of people are falling for it, and those are the ones that if you recognize that there's someone that's an NPC, just like there's nothing there, don't argue with them. Like, it's a complete waste of your time. You see that crazy person at the grocery store screaming at people or doing obscene things. Like, I don't recommend that anybody engage with that, because it's like people have these great intentions. Oh, let me go and send them love, or no, like, stay far away from them, because we don't know what kind of entities are attached, or they're drawing their power from, or why they're acting a certain way. So sometimes we just need to like let the NPCs be, and not engage with them. So if you have an NPC in your life, it doesn't have to be a horrible person that's going to scream, but it could be somebody that they're just not there anymore. And it's not that you're giving up on them, but you're just like, you're protecting yourself and your own family from that energy. Interestingly too, to bring a little science into this, research has shown that if you do a brain scan of somebody that has been diagnosed with sociopathic tendencies, or narcissist, or whatever label they've been given, versus somebody that is in the control group, the frontal lobe of the brain is really active in the kind of the control group, the people that are not exhibiting those behaviors. But then the ones in the other group, the narcissistic group, the sociopaths, the psychopaths, whatever they're labeled with, they have, it's almost like lights out in the frontal lobe of the brain. And it's interesting because I thought about that a long time ago when I saw a documentary on it, and I thought to myself, it must have to do with the fact that the true, you know, those that are truly anchored in the dark energies and that are like don't have compassion, and they are not connected to other people, and they are just in a very egocentric shadow side area of their kind of their existence. They must have a closed third eye and crown chakra, and they don't get a lot of life force energy. So the front of the brain is just not utilized. You know, that's where the compassion is. And it's interesting because I think that the entities hook into people. If you take it one step further, they hook into people through the mind. So very spiritual people who are that ground, and are aware of all of our reality, and they work on it, and they work on forgiveness, and they're compassionate and empathetic people that have light coming through. They're less likely to be manipulated and controlled, whereas the people that are very like left brain analytical, rigid, they don't like change, and they're the ones that like will fight you tooth and nail on these things or stuff in the on the news, and be adamant that it's real, and everything, conspiracy theories and theorists and this and that. I think those are the targeted ones from the dark player side, because they can get into the left brain more easily than they can in the right brain. I apologize for the lighting, but I'm in front of a window and the clouds are going by and this and that. So it's creating shadows and then bright and then shadows. Anyways, Florida. I forgot what I was saying. You know, the sociopath or the psychopaths rather, I think that they, you know, okay, reverse. People who are genuinely kind and good people, they get their highs from, you know, being of service and helping somebody, you know, like they helped the old lady cross the street. Oh yeah, I feel really good about what I did. I don't want anything in return. I don't want public recognition, but I feel great. I feel, you know, like I really helped that woman. And that's what fills them up. Whereas the psychopath, they need to get their highs from another way. So they're gonna be the ones that, like, you know, key someone's car or trip somebody in when there's a large crowd, and you know, the person doesn't know that they were who tripped them, or you know, darker stuff. But they get their high from hurting other people. So it's a contrast. There's a big difference there. But you know, they're very deceitful. They are very stuck in their ego. They're very arrogant, and they seemingly can be very neurotic, or their personality changes quite swiftly and abruptly. They can be quite aggressive, and they can be violent even. I had some notes, but I didn't grab my paper. So I don't know. I'll just hopefully that was everything that I wanted to say about this first group. Now, of course, I can never say everything about all groups ever, but I think that's good enough to kind of get you going. So then we have this another category, which I think are more of the sociopaths, because sociopaths are different than psychopaths, because they I think they still have a consciousness. I think they're still there. The soul is still there. They're just misguided, and they do have empathy. You know, maybe they hurt somebody, and in the moment they may not feel remorse, but later they do. Maybe they won't admit it, but they do. I think that they still have some empathy in there. They're so misguided and unloved throughout their life. Maybe they didn't get the love that, just like this psychopaths, same thing. They maybe were abused, maybe they had trauma, maybe they didn't get attention from mom and dad, maybe they were bullied a lot, and they just grew up with an unhealthy version of what normal boundaries are, or they need to feel validated, so they seek validation in very unhealthy ways, so they could still be hurtful and deceitful and arrogant and and very egocentric and all of this, but it's in a different kind of energy. I don't know how else to describe it. I think that their soul is still there. They're just lost, and when I was 23 and I had my first son and I was hating on everybody, one of the biggest epiphanies I had that I think was a result of him coming through in his light was I had a realization or this moment where things switched for me. And I've talked about this in the book. I've talked about it on a bunch of interviews where I said, what happened? Like instead of me looking at everyone like the enemy, I thought, why don't I look at everybody as they have an individual story? So if they're really not the nicest person, what happened to them? Maybe they were bullied too. Maybe they had kidnapping. Maybe they were sexually abused. Maybe they were physically abused. Maybe. And not that I was giving them excuses or passes, but it just made me more compassionate. And again, if I had gone on the path, if I had kept on the path of not caring about anything, I could have developed those psychopathic tendencies. But at this point, I developed some empathy and compassion and I started to make changes. So then I could have gone on the sociopathic tendencies. You see the difference? Because the sociopaths are going to cling to people or have unhealthy relationships and unhealthy boundaries. So they're going to cling to somebody, a girlfriend or a boyfriend or a friend, or it's in an unhealthy way. They're going to become dependent on that person. And so there's an unhealthy relationship, and they can also be liars. But I think that they're sloppy liars. They forget their lies. Like psychopaths are calculated. They remember their lies. Because remember, it's truth. If a lie is a truth to you, then you don't realize it's not a lie. So just like when you're telling the truth, you don't need to think about it because it's the truth. So you don't have any reason to lie. You're saying your truth. And a psychopath, when they are lying, it is like a truth to them. It's their reality. They believe it. So they don't get caught a lot of the times because it comes across so accurate or justified or whatever the word may be. But a sociopath, they are sloppy liars. They forget what they said or they overcompensate, and it can be really, really complicated. It can get really complicated. So, they can be quite competitive. They aren't going to have such dark thoughts and dark actions and behaviors as the psychopath, but they still could they can still feel excitement when they are shady towards somebody else, or they take advantage of somebody else, or they hurt somebody else. But again, there's a small amount of empathy, but it's not like they're not going to lose a lot of sleep over it. They're going to think about it, but then they might not, it might not change much, unfortunately. So before I get to the third well, hold on. Did I want to say anything else? Again, these can all be classified as narcissists as well. Again, I think that there is a loose terminology used around, and anybody that is not a nice person is just like, oh, they're a narcissist. And I think that it's important right now because of the fact that a big part of our discernment or the lesson that we're learning as a collective, because remember, you don't know how many lives, maybe you were the narcissist or the sociopath, and there could have been a lot of traumas or things that as a result that caused you to kind of go into that category. Look at me in one life, what could have happened. So I think we're being encouraged to look at everybody as not the enemy. But I wonder what happened to them. Doesn't mean you have to be their best friend. Doesn't mean you have to invite them over, but just kind of looking at the world through the eyes of, I wonder what their story is. I want, maybe that guy is a real a-hole because, he didn't get love from his mom. Gosh, I feel so bad. And now that's honestly, honest to God, the truth. When I see mean people out in public, or I come across these mean people or arrogant people or the narcissistic type of people tendencies, I always think, God, I feel so bad for them. I wonder, I wonder what happened when they were a child. Like what happened to them when they got to this point. Now, I quickly changed my mindfulness instead of feeling sorry for them, because then that puts me in a position of being superior to them. And that's not how I feel. But basically, I guess the better word is, instead of feeling sorry, is I feel compassionate. I'm empathic to their situation. Again, I'm not going to go and try to be their best friend. I'm not going to go in and try to change them. But I am going to look at them with kinder eyes, and wonder, what their story is or what they could have been through to get them to this point. A caveat or a pivot to this whole thing is, don't forget, and I've talked about this in a bunch of videos, we sign up to have certain people in our life that might seemingly to teach us certain things. And sometimes lessons need, if you don't get it the first time, sometimes the second round of the same lesson might be much harsher. Sometimes we need those abrupt personalities to jolt us out of this loop that we're in of repetitive patterns that we asked for. And so sometimes we need the narcissist sometimes in our life to like make us see things and break us out of old patterns. That's the roles that, like I talk about, where we don't know necessarily what we've signed up for ahead of time, and who we've asked to come into our life to play certain roles that are the antagonist or the bad guy or bad girl or whatever the role is, to teach us something. And it's all about how we respond to the severity of the experience or how long it lasts, et cetera, et cetera. So sometimes we need, well, it's not that we need, but sometimes they play that role is a dominant part of our journey or our learning. And we forget all of that. You know, the sociopath can also be very judgmental because, or they're seeking validation for things that they're lacking, or they're projecting their own sadness, their own traumas, or what they want. So maybe they didn't have a loving relationship growing up, so they don't want anyone else to have a loving relationship. So they're going to self-sabotage their own, but also everyone else's around them, because they don't want anyone else to be happy because they're not happy. I mean, there's so many layers to this. And I think sometimes when we understand the why, we can look at the world in general through much kinder eyes. Even when I see a child that's misbehaved, and I think to them, you know, what's happening in their home? What are they not getting? What nourishment are they not getting? What love are they not getting? And it's just the reality, the harsh reality of the 3D is that the working parents are so stressed out that they're working all the time. They don't have the energy to give the children the attention that they've needed. Not like we used to get, you know, many, many years ago, many generations ago, where at least mom was home all the time. Maybe dad was working a lot, but mom was always there, you know, that type of situation, or grandparents were around. Everything is so different now. And then we have the 3D woke agenda, where they're doing everything they can to desperately pull the family unit apart. And so now the children, the latchkey, which is what they called it back when I was younger, when the parents were working and the kids were home for hours by themselves after school with no adult supervision. And they called that the latchkey kids, which I think we're doing pretty well. But you know, they're the ones that are being targeted now. All those hours they're alone, they're on TikTok and all of these social media platforms, and they're being targeted through the television shows and the movies and the celebrities and the devil horns and the this and that. And it's just like they're being immersed in this hypnotic or suggestive programming, and a lot of it's subliminal, so they don't even realize it, that the subliminal messages behind the obvious messages, they're even layered even beyond that, where the message might be devil horns, but then the subliminal messages is Satanism and this and that. I mean, just forever. So the third type of you know, narcissistic behavior or tendencies, which is where I'm getting to, is the Starseeds. And I've talked about the Artemis group a lot, and my daughter is in that category, and I have a lot of clients in that category. And then there's the strong-willed boys as well. So the girls and the boys. Why are they strong-willed? And because they have a big job to do. They're the change makers, the pioneers, the way showers. They're here to break down paradigms. They can't be manipulated. They can't be bought. You know, they don't care about the things that most children care about. They're beyond that. And so they come off brash, they come off even arrogant. And like I said, in my book, they can also come across as they lack compassion. They're not humble. They can be perceived as arrogant, stubborn. Now, if you take all of that in the context of an adult and other things that I've talked about in the past, that is the textbook, you know, what you'd see in a book as a narcissist. But are these children truly narcissists? I don't think so. I think that they are exhibiting personality traits that are necessary for them to succeed in a harsh reality. And not everybody is love and light. Not everybody comes in on a spiritual path. Remember that a lot of people on the planet right now that are the change makers, I'm talking adults now too, are spiritual beings already. They're already enlightened. They didn't come into this reality necessarily to preach enlightenment or to learn enlightenment or learn all of these things. They already know it. They've already mastered it. They come in here, and some of them want to blend in. And so they're going to insert themselves into maybe religious dogmatic, you know, societies or communities. that they don't align with, but they insert themselves in that kind of arena, or maybe the corporate arena or the medical arena or whatever, political, et cetera, et cetera. And they're not going to be the typical the typical spiritual guru type. They're gonna fit right in with everybody else. They're going to be competitive. They're not going to talk about spirituality and crystals and meditation and all of that on purpose. Is that because they don't believe in it or align with it? Maybe not in their conscious mind, but that was part of the plan. That's their free will. But their soul, the essence of their soul, is quite advanced, and they came in here to blend in, to be a part of great change, and they don't want to be separated from all of the people that they may need to be they might need to they might need, or what they can they how do I say this, that they're supposed to influence in a positive way. So they'll turn the spiritual button off in this life, and they might go their whole life not preaching spirituality. But what they will do is teach principles of the law of one, but not without saying it, just being a good person. They won't use the word karma, but they'll say, the energy you put out is the energy you get back. But they'll say it in a very normal, well, what's normal? Normal 3D kind of themes or words or jargon, so that it doesn't make people uncomfortable. And that's so true. I mean, I think I am a pretty good balanced person. I can blend really well. I think it's one of my superpowers. So I could go months or a long time in communities and nobody will know anything about what I do. I'm a nice person. I'm very respectful and kind. I am a great mother to those people, very helpful, this and that, but they would never know necessarily what I do unless they ask, and I'll tell them. But if they don't ask, I don't, because I don't want to make people, because it does make people uncomfortable sometimes, and I don't want to make anyone ever feel uncomfortable. So I don't push anything on to them. But then there are others that are super guru-like, and they come in and they're preaching their whole life, and they're out and they're doing so many things all over the world, writing so many books, and that's their passion, that's their role. But the labeled, narcissistic, or the personality that's a brash or seemingly arrogant or seemingly ego-driven, remember, those people could be on assignment to kind of fit in with everybody else. And I know this is hard to believe, but and I hope I'm making more sense. But they're here to be change makers, but not like a backdoor entrance, like so they feel like their peers feel comfortable with them because they think that they're more like them, and then they can influence them in other ways. So there are leaders, but then maybe they're leaders, but they have a different energy about them. But people can't pinpoint why they like them so much. I don't know why I feel so comfortable around you, but I do, and you're the best boss I've ever had, or you're the best teacher I've ever had, or this. But the teacher's not really pushing themselves. And then in some cases, maybe they are really rude and really arrogant, and and that's another extreme. And I'll tell you that a lot of that has to do with the enlightened beings that come here completely open and by free will, and they want to come and they want to help people, and they genuinely care about humanity. But then they get here and they're just like, WTF, I hate all of this. And they see people just hurting each other left and right, and all these horrible things. And then they develop a distaste consciously in that moment, in that life, in that reality, for everybody, because they're just like, what's wrong with everybody here? I don't relate to anybody. And then they can feel like, gosh, I just don't like people. And they came in to help those same people, but then when they were here, they forgot. And then they just grew a heavy distaste for those same people that they came in to help. Because they just can't stand, like most people, they probably less than 0.5% or even smaller of the people on the world, in the population of the globe, could they relate to. But everybody's spread out so much that they may not ever find someone like them. So they're around a lot of 3D people, or very contrast to what they are innately. So they just feel like, gosh, I hate everybody. And then other people can perceive that person as, well, what's wrong with them? They think they're so much better than everybody. And so you see how this gets dirty. So I'm not giving anybody a formula. I'm not saying it's this, that, and the other, and it's nothing else. I'm just trying to throw a bunch of things out to everybody here watching, that there is a lot of layers to this. And although I've kind of laid out 3 categories of the narcissistic or egocentric characteristics, I believe that most of them are starseeds. But the true heavy psychopathic or NPCs are lost and maybe not to be found again. They're just too far controlled by the demonics or the dark web or the dark players of this reality that, gosh, I pray for their soul, that they get out of this somehow. But again, on some level, they may have at some point they consented. They just don't remember how or why. And that's an extreme category. But then there's the sociopathic group that are genuinely lost, and I think if somebody that they trusted could just get them to open up, they would admit that they had a traumatic life and they don't know how to love. They don't know how to be in this world. They don't know how to trust. So they just project and they try to hurt everybody so that they don't get hurt. And there's a lot of layers to it. And again, no excuses for these people. But I mean, like imagine if you never got love from mom and dad, or maybe dad was a alcoholic and abused your mom, and then your mom was so disconnected and dissociated that she couldn't give you the love, and then you had siblings that were mean to you, and they and then everyone at school was mean to you, and maybe you had a learning challenge, and then nobody was able to help you with that because your parents weren't paying attention. So then you felt stupid at school like I did. And then you kind of reclused and hid yourself. And then you didn't relate to all the other kids because they seemingly had a happier life, and you just wanted to hide in the shadows because you were embarrassed. And I mean, just that's one example of that wasn't my life. I'm just elements of that were true for me, but I didn't give you guys my experience totally. That was just a fake one. But imagine, somebody growing up just constantly not feeling secure or loved or validated, and then they grow up, and then they're tempted by the dark entities, and then here lie the adults that are just those awful people that we can't stand. And it breaks my heart, because I don't know. I want to hug everybody and just say, like, it's okay. But is it though? Maybe it's not. And then we have the starseeds, and they're struggling from the get-go. Like my daughter, just like she gets so frustrated and doesn't understand, and seems like she has no compassion sometimes for other people. She's just a bulldozer trying to get her point across, and very competitive. But then there are moments where she's vulnerable and very sensitive, and I see another side that she's just trying to figure out who she is and where she is and how to operate. And I think that's all children. And when you come in really and very advanced, or knowing a lot, and seemingly everyone else around you doesn't, and you get frustrated, and you're that leader personality, and you're here to be a positive leader, but you don't know how to do that. So then you're kind of a cranky leader. Like I admitted, my daughter, sometimes she'll be teaching her class in her bedroom and she's yelling at her fake students. I'm like, hey man, you remember to be nice, gotta be nice to them. And she, it's like she gets frustrated. I'm like, how are you frustrated with your imaginary class? But I think she's just role playing on experiences from school that she's had. And many children do that. And we want to encourage them and let them know that it's okay. This is a safe place to do that, but think about why. And we have to teach them and be good leaders ourselves. So just remember, starseeds struggle too. We're not perfect. We may be enlightened somewhere else, and we might be very ascended, and we might have descended to come here, and we might have all of this knowledge. But when you're in the washing machine with everybody else, then it's really difficult and challenging. Some have a harder time than others. And I think the spectrum is just like huge, and everything in between. So there's every single scenario you could possibly imagine. And it's happening to all of us in real time. And right now, I think the best thing we can do is just understand all of this and look at the world through kinder eyes, and just know that everyone is struggling in their own way, in their own silent energetic kind of laundry basket, if we keep using the laundry as an example. And we just don't know what dirty laundry is in there with them. And we don't need to know. That's the thing. But we just need to be compassionate about, I don't know what's going on with you. But we can have clear boundaries and say, I don't, you don't talk to me that way. You don't treat me that way. And maybe you say, I won't be around you, but I wish you all of the best. And, we can operate around those situations, or we can operate through those situations in a lot of different ways. It's just depending on the situation and how these people are in your life. Is it one of your children that's adults, or is it your parents, or uncle or aunt or cousin that they're always there and you can't really get rid of them? Or is it somebody that's a long-term friend that you're growing apart from and you're trying to navigate through that? Do I stay friends with them or not? Evaluate all of that. If the energy exchange is not even and you find yourself being pulled down every time you're with somebody, then it's likely time for you to create boundaries and disconnect for right now. If you find each other again, sometimes we need to separate in order to heal more profoundly. And then because you can't do it together. Sometimes we just hinder each other for a lot of different reasons. We trigger each other, we pull each other down. Maybe there's some underlining subconscious competition. So if like one of you is doing better, then the other one doesn't like it. And all of these things. So sometimes we got to separate so we can heal better on our own. And then if divine intervention brings you back later, great. If it doesn't, then I think personally about those things as, okay, well, my contract with them is likely done. And I just keep moving forward. Now, with family members, it gets a little bit more challenging. If you have that sociopath or that psychopath or that arrogant borderline person in your family, then it gets a little bit more challenging. And I'm not going to give everybody the answers because I don't have the answers. But you still can create boundaries. You still can say no. You still can space yourself from them. Even if you live in the same house, you go to your separate area of the home, or you go out for a drive, or you create energetic boundaries that are very strong and sturdy, that you reiterate. Is that the right thing I'm thinking? I guess you continuously connect with it to make sure it's still there and still resilient and strong. And you just could say, I don't consent. The most powerful thing, I'll just end it with this today. I don't know how long I've been talking, but hopefully this has made sense. But the most powerful words that you can say right now in the English language, or our language in general, it doesn't matter what language you speak, everyone has their words for this statement. The most powerful thing we can say right now is, I do not consent. That's it. And you can say it with regard to everything. I do not consent to 3D interference. I do not consent to relationships that are not serving my highest good. I do not consent to illness that's not serving my highest good. Remember, and go back to my manifestation video, because we do have experiences that we've asked for a reason. So that's why I always say, for my highest good, because I don't know necessarily what I might have signed up for. So I don't want to say that I'm not going to have challenges in my relationship because maybe I needed that. So I'm going to say, I do not consent to any negative energy surrounding my relationship that is not serving my highest good and my partner's highest good, or whoever you're talking about. And that it can be for anybody and anything in life. So use that, utilize it, practice it repetitively every single day. I do not consent. Anytime you're feeling you might be attacked, or energetically like there's something around you that's making you feel down, or suicidal thoughts that are not real, or thoughts that are not like yourself. I do not consent. I do not consent to any energy attachments to me at this time, or any time that is not serving my highest good in all dimensions, time and space. And so it is. And you just keep saying it. I do not consent to financial instability that's not serving my highest good in all dimensions, time and space. And so it is. Like, you just keep reiterating it. So if there is 3D interference causing your financial instability, or whatever it is that keeps happening to you, you can say, I don't consent to it. Utilize your free will, because the dark players don't want to know that we have the free will to not consent. So they don't give us that option. They trick us into consenting by watching those movies, if we watch it, or having the black box technology in our home by buying the laptops and the TVs and the phones. And we've, inadvertently, unknowingly consented. But we can revert that and say, nope, I bought the laptop. I'm using it for work. So I do not consent to any interference through this laptop. I do not consent to anything surrounding this laptop or any technology in my home that's not serving my highest good or my family's highest good in all dimensions, time, and space. And so it is. Bye-bye. And you just and you stand and you're knowing. Don't second guess it. Don't say, oh, I wonder if that works, because then you've just discounted your power. So you have to believe it. You have to say it with certainty. And yeah, you want to do it periodically when you feel like you need it. It could be the start of every day you say it, or you may not feel like you need it for the whole week because you're like, yep, I'm in my power. I'm good. I've got my zone going. So it's going to be different for everybody. Teach your children to say it. And that's the best thing that we can do right now. Look through people, look around at the world and people, not by the decisions that they make, not by the actions that they have and how they've treated everybody or you, and just try to look at them through kinder eyes. It doesn't mean you have to accept it. Doesn't mean that you're going to enable it. It's just that it is what it is, and we wish them the best. And whatever is of their highest good, I hope that I hope that is attracted to them, or whatever the word I'm trying to use. Whatever is in that person's highest good will be divinely orchestrated. And then you just kind of leave it at that, and it has nothing to do with you. I think if more people exercised this this mentality, or this is what mindfulness is, we would shift the tone or the trajectory of this reality. Because if it's relevant no matter where we focus our consciousness on. If everybody in the world is in fear, focusing their attention on population control and transhumanism, and anything negative that you can think of, then we can manifest that in our reality, because we are thinking about it so much and worrying about it so much that then we attract it. It's like we, again, inadvertently consent to it. But if we say, I do not consent to any of that, and I am focusing, and you just focus your attention on what the positive aspects and what you can control, and you keep saying, I do consent to experiences and a reality that is in service of my highest good, or in alignment with my highest good only, and my family, my children, or however you want to say it. And you just keep putting that into the world, and you focus your energy just on that. And things will change, and we can change the trajectory well, I already believe that we're headed in a positive direction. The point of no return is already passed, but we can control how fast we get there, because remember, time is relative. It's an illusion. So it could take years, or it could take months, or anything in between, all dependent on how everything I just said today. How, if we continuously look at somebody as the enemy, and I hate them and what they did and how, well, then we're going to be here much longer. And if we think, oh, well, on this date, this is going to happen, and we're not going to have any food, and this and that, and we focus, then if enough people are focusing on that, then that can definitely manifest. I don't think that we'll ever get to the point where, like I said, we're at the point of no return. So really what's happening is the people who are projecting a positive future are going to put the energy towards that manifestation happening faster. And then the ones that are focusing on the negative are just holding, just pushing us back, so it doesn't happen as quickly. It just takes longer, and there's more drama with it, if that makes sense. So I don't think that we're going to go back to what could have been, but we could definitely be influenced by how quickly we get to where we're going, based on the collective thought process. So I think that hopefully that makes sense. Okay, I think that's all for today. I'm going to post this before I do my live on Monday, what's the date? The 2nd of October. I'm going to do a live at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll have a few subjects that I'd like to talk about in the beginning, like I did the last couple, and then I welcome anybody to put their questions in the chat. So whoever can join in, please join in. It'll be live on my channel. So put your questions in the chat, or in the comments in the YouTube thumbnail. And maybe if you have any follow-up questions from what I've said, that I'll put this out before then we can talk more about that at that time. So I hope to see you guys on Monday evening, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on my channel for the live. And I have a bunch more. I have so many videos I want to do. I do them whenever I have a moment, and then I put them out. And then, so I don't know when the next ones will come, but I will keep them flowing as much as possible. So I hope that this video finds all of you well. Until next time, I'll see you guys soon. Bye.